Streaming to YouTube. There we go. All right, cool. We're live on YouTube. All right, welcome everybody. So in today's video, we're going to be covering the topic of practitioner training. How do you sell vagus nerve stimulation services to patients? And why would they need that? And what's in it for you if you do it? But before we do that, we want to do our simultaneous squeeze, which is a breathing practice we start all of our videos off with. So if you only want to come here for the first few minutes of the video, just to breathe with me, your life will be significantly better if you join us. So how it works is we're going to take a deep breath in, breathe in as deeply as you can, and then you're going to try and exhale like you're blowing out a balloon, but keeping the air in, okay? So ready? 3, 2, 1. And then imaginary balloon, breathe out, but close your lips. And then slowly exhale. Now you really exhale. And you should feel like a really nice feeling from that. It does feel pretty remarkable if you do it properly. Let me know in the chat. Did you get an effect? Did you not? Let me know. If anybody didn't get an effect, we can certainly do a little bit of training at the very end of the video. But let's crack into it. So, okay, so practitioner training, the reason I wanted to do this video today is because I get a lot of questions from people who see me in the field and they go, wow, Sterling, you seem to have a lot of clients. They seem to be getting like pretty substantial changes in their health pretty radically and pretty fast. What do you do exactly and how do you help people? And so I want to do it really would take a 5-part video series. Could not do this in one video. And I want to do kind of a deeper dive into what does it mean to be a vagus nerve coach and how people watching can kind of hopefully replicate some of the things that I'm doing with their own clients potentially. So first and foremost, who am I? My name is Sterling Cooley. I'm the CEO of the world famous and the world's only vagus nerve stimulation and repair specific program. I'm the first one to have ever launched one of these, and I'm the longest standing health practitioner in the field of vagus nerve stimulation, offering it to consumers in a service orientation. We primarily work with non-invasive forms of vagus nerve stimulation, whereas most people who hear from it from their doctors are hearing about it as a implanted vagus nerve stimulator device to treat a number of pretty serious health complications. So how did I get into this field? Well, I worked in biomedical technology for 12 years. I have worked in biomedical technology for 12 years. I started off using ultrasound to stimulate the human brain. And I was actually just watching a video from Stanford about some of my colleagues and just catching up with some of the work that they're up to down there. They just had a big event called FUN, which is Focused Ultrasound Neuromodulation at Stanford. And about 6 years into that journey, I discovered the ability for ultrasound, specifically ultrasound, particular types of ultrasound, very particular parameters, could actually stimulate the vagus nerve. And I was like, what's the vagus nerve? That's kind of interesting. I'd been so focused on everything between your ears, your big brain. And I didn't quite realize that this one nerve that runs down both sides of your neck could be elicited to change its activity and cause a profound shift in a person's state. And if you know anything about, the study of human consciousness and the state of a person, you know that being able to quickly change a person's state can really help them through a lot of challenging, difficult times. And that was just the beginning of this road of discovery about the power of the vagus nerve and what it regulates. So it was in about 2017 that I was at my home on an island in the Hamptons, basically, and I had my ultrasound device with me, and I was doing Wim Hof breathing at the time. Big Wim Hof breather. You'll see in a lot of my videos I take a lot of influence from Dr. Wim Hof from the Netherlands. He does a lot of breathing. And I said, well, what if I stimulated my vagus nerve, held it right here with ultrasound, and I did the breathing practice, which also is known to stimulate your vagus nerve. So I said, what if I did a double whammy? And so I did. I held this ultrasound right up to my neck. I laid down. I had a chi machine rocking my legs back and forth, and I was doing the Wim Hof. And then you exhale, and then you inhale, and then you hold and you squeeze. And the first session I did, I had a really like, whoa, like a wow, like a really incredible feeling from it. And I felt like really good. I felt like kind of high, actually. I felt like kind of psychedelic, actually. And so I did it a second time, and then I did it the third time. And by the end of the third time, I was doing the breath hold at the end. If you know Wim Hof, you know. And what tended to happen was I had a full psychedelic trip. So I literally, my brain consciousness exited my brain, allegedly. I don't know exactly what happened, but it had the experience of leaving my body, entering into a bright white room, then being transported to Central Park in New York City, listening to conversations all around me, having a picture perfect, vivid, lucid experience of being in a completely different location, and then being sucked into my body while still stimulating my vagus nerve and going, where the fuck, what the, and like, I remember my hand kind of was just like this. And I was like, what the fuck just happened? Has anybody ever had that experience, by the way? Put in the comments if you've ever had an experience like that with your vagus nerve. I had no idea that was possible. Typically with Wim Hof breathing, that's not really possible. And I had been doing Wim Hof for about 2+ years consistently on a daily basis. Never once had I had that kind of an experience. And I thought, geez, I almost killed myself. Turns out that I so substantially stimulated my vagus nerve that I activated my pineal gland, and I activated tons of networks in my brain. I thought I was having an out-of-body experience, like a near-death experience. Turns out that's typical of that combination. So anyway, it was this profound experience. I'm almost downplaying how substantially impactful that experience was for me. And it was that time in 2017 that I was like, okay, put the brakes on. What the hell is this? How could the vagus nerve, when stimulated with ultrasound, give someone such a profound shift in their state? So this immediately captured my attention. So I immediately started texting my friends in the ultrasound community. I said, do you know anything about this? Have you come across this? They're like, not really. That sounds pretty crazy. So they tried it and they're like, okay, there's something there. Then we ran a small research study on 20 subjects, and we replicated the exact same thing with them. I remember overseeing one of our, I would call them, I don't even know if I would call them a patient, but a research subject. And we were there observing her while doing the exact same thing. And at the end of her breathing, she did 3 sessions with the stimulation on her vagus nerve, and she just didn't say anything. And I was like, oh God. I was like, I'm like, we fucked up. Maybe she's dead. And I was like, are you okay? Like, are you there? Like, I couldn't wait longer to see if she's like there to stir her. And she's like, oh my God. And so she spoke, and I was like, what happened? She's like, oh my God, I just remembered when I was a young girl, my sister, she held me underwater and she tried to drown me, and I completely forgot about this. And she was crying a little bit, and I was like, oh my God. And she's like, I had completely forgotten about this. And oh my God, that's why I've been so afraid of water my whole life. Oh my God. And so like all these insights just started rushing to her. And I was like, that was similar to my experience. I mean, I didn't have a remembrance of some kind of a traumatic childhood memory like that. But, again, stimulating the vagus nerve, again, that rush of insight came into my mind. And it really was like a profound experience. So it was from that first initial batch of 20 initial research subjects that we put into the study that gave me every indication that it was not just a fluke, that I didn't just almost, hurt myself or have an out-of-body experience, that there's something legitimately to this method of stimulating the vagus nerve that can give people some profound effects. And the effects weren't just these temporary things. These seemed to manifest themselves as more long-term effects where people were having day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month life improvements that were substantial. I mean, again, remember, what would your life be like if you remembered a deep childhood wound and you were now not afraid to talk about it and you could express it to a therapist thanks to vagus nerve stimulation? So that I was there to have that experience with the subject was deeply therapeutic for them. Whereas most people today would go to look for things like psychedelics or breath therapy. In this case, it was simply stimulating the vagus nerve in this case, with some breathing as well. But we started seeing people with pretty bad insomnia issues, finding resolution, depression resolution, gastroparesis resolution. I was pretty shocked at, again, it was the results I saw first, then me looking into how the hell is that possible? And then realizing, oh my God, the vagus nerve controls so many of these important functions that I didn't even realize how many of these can go haywire in someone's health. That a lot of what's going wrong in someone's life, in someone's health, could be, in a lot of cases, tied to the function or the dysfunction of their vagus nerve. And that by simply, I don't want to say simply stimulating their vagus nerve. I mean, there's a lot more to it. And we'll go over that in the next few days, of course, because it's going to be a 5-day series, a campaign on, what do you need to know going into this as a practitioner, so you know what the deep potential is here, but also so you know, like, what to look at, how to be aware of what you're doing before you do it. That's a key thing. I had to learn a lot before I could even be in the position to professionally help people with this insight, this technique. So let's talk a little bit about like patients, like who are the people who benefit from stuff like this. So just so you know some of the numbers, on average, about 1 in 8 people in the United States, so that's about 14% of the United States population right now, is currently walking around with some disorder related to their vagus nerve. On average, every year, $300 billion are spent on people seeking treatment, $300 billion on people seeking treatment for issues that are downstream of a vagus nerve issue. To give you reference, $100 billion is spent. This is my phone talking to me. I didn't say Siri. Sorry. Where was I? So diabetes is about $160 billion spent per year on treatments from clients, from patients. And then ischemic heart failure, heart disease, is about $89 billion spent. So to give you reference, vagus nerve stimulation issues are in the $300+ billion cash spent range. So if you don't think that there's potential here as a practitioner to work on the vagus nerve, you might need to go back to rudimentary math class, because that's a clear-cut indication that there are severe issues and challenges. And most people, out of that 1 out of 8, I would say about 50%, 42% more accurately, of that 1 in 8 people do seek out treatment. So it's a 1 out of 6 people are currently actively seeking out treatments for something related to a vagus nerve dysfunction. And as we go, we'll talk more about vagus nerve dysfunction. Diane, I love your question. I love to tell you more about the techniques for gastroparesis. I believe we're going to cover that tomorrow. Tomorrow I'm going to cover about how to design a treatment plan for a client. But today I just want to focus on, vagus nerve stimulation, what kind of people are out there that need help. And that includes people with gastroparesis, depression, rheumatoid arthritis, multiple sclerosis, anxiety attacks. I mean, just the mental health crisis alone warrants us throwing our bodies on the problem, because it's very bad in the country that I live in, the United States. There are epidemics of illness that are affecting people, and there really aren't today any really good treatments. I don't know if you've noticed. It's pretty bad out there. So certainly I'll talk a lot in depth about what specific treatment protocols look like in day number 2. Let me just make a note of that because I don't want to make promises I can't keep. So day 2, we'll talk more, just to make a specific note for you, Diane, on gastroparesis. I probably wouldn't forget that one because that's a big one, and that involves stimulating the vagus nerve in the lower body, not just in the neck. But I don't think I would have forgotten that one, but just in case. So who are the kind of people that I typically see seeking out help with their vagus nerve? So that, as a practitioner, you might have a lot of these types of clients already who may not even know that vagus nerve stimulation is an option for them. And as we, of course, always want to focus on symptoms, and of course, diagnoses are extremely helpful, but there is a subset of the patient population that responds really well to vagus nerve stimulation more than other people. And I think identifying that core niche or audience is a better option than just saying, I want to treat just gastroparesis. Because as you guys know, as practitioners, you probably don't have one, maybe you do, but maybe not just one specific type of an autoimmune condition. Maybe you deal with people with Lyme disease, people with depression, people with weight gain. There can be gut-brain axis disorder. There's a lot of different things that a practitioner might see come across their roster. And you'll typically find people have a specialization with a type of person. So here's what I've identified in my own line of work as kind of the core primary clientele, so to speak, of who is out there who needs help with their vagus nerve and who is seeking out the help. Because, again, if you have a solution but nobody's looking for it, it's not, again, I mean, I get the whole, but we should anyway. And no, I don't really believe that. If you want to offer some support to people who are actively looking for it, just like I wouldn't say offer, do high schoolers need probably help with finding a job out of high school or going to college? Yeah, probably, but there aren't a lot of high schoolers who are looking for career counseling outside of their parents or their school. So if you're like, my niche, my market is high school students looking to get into the best colleges and I'm going to make a ton of a difference. It's like, you're probably not, because they're not actively looking on the internet for help. And then we're going to primarily look at where are the people that are looking for help located. And they're usually going to be, again, through the internet. So I think that's pretty important. So key thing here, hone in on this. What I've found is that the best responders to vagus nerve stimulation and the ones who are actually actively looking for help are typically going to be women. That's right. And I mean, women, basically. So women, and typically women above a certain age range, usually about the age range of 45 years old up to about 67 years old. In that range is typically going to be the patient population that is most harmed by what I believe is probably a systemic lack of attention paid to female specific health issues. I think that the reason why that population is so underserved is because they're typically told that their issues are just in their head, and that they're just given a bunch of medications to, hey, take an antidepressant. Sorry, we don't have a fix for you. I'm referencing doctors. Thank you, TK. Yes. So women above a certain age are treated in the medical world like pretty bad, like second-class citizens, I would say. So and I think they know that. They're not, obviously they're highly intelligent, they're highly attuned to energy, to the vibe of their doctor, and they can tell, like, this person probably doesn't care about me that much. They're just trying to get me in and out of the door. So they're actively investing in looking for novel treatments, let's say, different ways of addressing the issue that aren't going to involve pills or implants or surgery or anything like that. Vagus nerve stimulation really fits so well in that world with a female population, because, I personally, I don't know this. I don't know this for a fact, but I do suspect that women, genetically speaking, have a more developed vagus nerve. That's my feeling. And I think it makes sense because the vagus nerve is our kind of our rest and digest nerve. It's our social nerve. You notice women are a lot more social creatures than men are, right? I'm sure this is going to get me canceled because I'm saying men and women. Oh, okay. If you're one of those people, you're going to be sorely disappointed I'm not woke. So please leave now. There's a difference between men and women. Okay, facts. And so yes, women above a certain age range with autoimmune conditions, with things like, I'd say certainly like Lyme, mold illness, long COVID, ME/CFS, gastroparesis, depression, and then then we can get on to further things. But the list goes on. I'm sure many practitioners are like, oh yeah, what about this? POTS, cervical instability, neck issues. A lot of these things are circulated around vagus nerve specific issues. So if you treat the vagus nerve first, and we'll talk more about, again, we have to differentiate what is vagus nerve stimulation. How is it different than supplementation? It is because these are different things. Can they work together? Yes. Hey, Danielle, good to see you. What's up? Hey, talking about helping practitioners with their vagus nerve stimulation for their patients, potentially giving away some deep insights into this field. So that's the typical patient population is that. Now, let's talk about why vagus nerve stimulation seems to work so well. Well, the pathogenesis, so to speak, of a, let's say, a female client in their 50s who has an immune response, an autoimmune condition, which could be triggered by a latent Lyme infection, could be triggered by domestic stress, let's say, domestic abuse, can severely trigger autonomic dysregulation and shutdown. These are very common. These definitely happen. It's a very unfortunate. And I wish I could do anything I could to stop that from happening. But oftentimes, where people end up finding you is once the damage has been done, so to speak, and they're hopefully away from that situation. But I've been in I would say a fortunate situation to provide help and comfort and solace and vagus nerve stimulation to quite a number of women who are actually actively in an abusive spousal relationship. And they can tell, they're like, I developed gastroparesis, I developed anxiety, I feel horrible, they have no emotions, they're reactive emotionally. And we want to get them the support that they need in that time. And oftentimes the support that you can give them in the umbrella of that relationship is limited. And that is the real benefit with one big benefit with vagus nerve stimulation today is that these are devices that you can get to a client. You can get them in their hands, in their home, that they can use every day. And they can have the certainty of having something in their possession that they know tangibly moves the ball forward for them in their health. And they can start to stand up for themselves in a safe, comfortable, boundary setting way. That's another benefit of the vagus nerve, is that it does seem to, when it's working, to make you more tactful in your social negotiation skills. Let's just say that, which is again, a whole really interesting field, or whole line of discussion. Happy to go there at some point in time. But why is vagus nerve stimulation so powerful for these populations? Generally speaking, when the body is stressed, we have sympathetic dominant state. So people know about the sympathetic system. That's your fight or flight, fearful response, run or fight or hide or shut down or whatever. Just get the heck out of there. That's what your body does to respond to stress. Your vagus nerve regulates in large part the parasympathetic system. And the parasympathetic system is what allows you to calm down, to really effectively calm your body. And if you're under constant stress and constant, like I would call it assault, constant stress assault by the world, by the environment, by the mind, by whatever, your vagus nerve can have a difficult time activating. Like, have you ever, anybody raise your hand watching, if you've ever been in a cold, wintry state in the wintertime and tried to start your car, but the engine doesn't turn over? You know, it's like, or your battery dies in your car, the engine won't start. It's a lot like that. If your vagus nerve goes, the engine of your car just doesn't rev up. It just doesn't go. And so enough, yeah, Charlene, you know, you're in the north. So enough assault on the parasympathetic system will cause an intense shutdown. So a lot of these clients are dealing with that type of a situation. And this is especially why traditional therapies just might not work for them, because in order for, I fundamentally believe, and this is a fantastic lesson for practitioners, and I hope they can really take this to heart, is that unless your parasympathetic system is active, the body is super resistant to change. And that means that you can give a patient all the supplements in the world. You can give them all the physical, somatic, chiropractic, manual manipulation from the world experts. But if their parasympathetic vagal system is recessed and not functioning, their body is going to say, no, 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 no. And it's not going to take it. So typically, the best combinations that I see are where you have a really good practitioner and they have some of those really difficult clients, is that when they drop in vagus nerve stimulation into those clients' lives, night and day difference. Absolute huge difference. And I would say that's kind of the secret sauce here, which is that, you know, in terms of the kind of care that I provide for clients, I want every one of them with a vagus nerve stimulator from day one. You know, so one of the things that you'll see where we design we'll go over designing a protocol. We'll look at what could it look like potentially in actual practical ways if you had a gastroparesis client, for instance, that you wanted to help. What would it look like in terms of their from day 0 to day 1 to day 30 to day 60 to day 90? What does that progression of care look like? It's important to, you know, before you run out and like, I'm sending all my clients a vagus nerve stimulator, let's, you know, again, take a macro, bigger picture view and then identify how that can work. But if you're a really good practitioner, even a great practitioner, even a therapist, a nutritionist, an exercise, somatic, breathing coach, you're going to have some of those difficult cases. And I would even argue that even the non-difficult cases that you have, the ones you're like, no, this person's progressing great, is that if you combine vagus nerve stimulation with those clients, is that they would treat you like a god in their care. They would be like, oh my God. I believe you could see a 2 to 3 times improvement in their care cycle compared to just your normal practitioner care. I mean, think of how amazing that would be for you. Now, I know some of you are kind of scared. You're like, uh-oh, but if my clients get better so fast, how am I going to make any money? Well, we're going to talk about that more again tomorrow, which is progressions of care. And I believe that personally, the thing I believe about designing these things, and we'll talk about pricing and that kind of stuff too tomorrow. Like, how do you design something? How do you charge for it? And then on day 3, we'll actually talk about how do you interact with potential clients and your existing clients, and how do you discuss the topic of vagus nerve stimulation with them appropriately to get them on board? Because, you know, it's going to take some convincing. It's going to take some persuasion and some leadership. And sometimes the best way to lead is for you to do it yourself. And so we'll talk about that as well, maybe a little bit tomorrow. Some of you might be like, I want to at least try it for myself. I have a lot of practitioners who work with me who aren't chronically ill by any means, but they just really want to, they're like, I want to experience this from the inside out. I would love to see, how does Sterling run a program? Like, how is he able to get such good results? And so we actually have devices we send out to our practitioner partners too. So something to consider. We will be, I mean, like I said, this is going to be 5 days of jam-packed information. I hope you're taking notes because we're going to really go into it. I'm not holding anything back. I have nothing to hold back here, nothing to hide. Just want to get it out there. Hopefully, if, gosh, 10 of you watching today and on the replay, because I know I give you like, a couple hours notice for this video. Hopefully some change happens. That would be really cool. Hopefully some of you are like, you know what? I think this could help my patients get better results. So, vagus nerve stimulation is so powerful because when it's paired with a good therapy, because I believe that I'm not the kind of person who's going to say only vagus nerve stimulation and that's it. No, if you look into what I do with clients, I'm talking about neck strengthening, supplementation with choline to make sure they have enough acetylcholine in their system so that the vagus nerve can actually work. We're talking about mindset support. We do some aspects with like hypnosis and affirmations and life planning. I do some amazing work with clients on getting them resourced around how are you going to show up with your family? How are you going to show up in your business? And these are normal standard clients that are just in the program because they were like, I was bedridden, I was sick, I had lots of just lost hope for my care. That's what a lot of these ladies say before they come into the program. And then they're like 2 months in, they're like, I'm going to start a business. I'm going to do some amazing stuff. I have one client right now who is just like taking this stuff and it's like rocket fuel for her life. She's outperforming my wildest expectations for a client. So there's some amazing stuff that you can do with clients once you rapidly get them through that health crisis. And anyway, that's why I really do believe in the power of vagus nerve stimulation and all of that jazz. So anyway, just to keep these videos rather short and to the point, I don't want to, again, I'm known for waxing poetic on the power of the vagus nerve. But what I'd love to do at this point in time is I'm sure some of you might have some questions for me, or you might have, if you need me to clarify some terms, or again, do you want to know about the anatomy of the vagus nerve? What technology? I mean, there's lots of questions that I can answer here today just to kind of get us started a little bit in this subject. And then also, the questions that you ask today will help me better utilize our time tomorrow and the following days. So happy to take any questions now. If you can formulate some questions for me, I'll continue on a little bit more just to summarize today's video, just so you have a kind of a clear picture of what is, what are we doing? What are we talking about here? So just to summarize here, I'm doing this video because I really do believe in the healing power of the vagus nerve itself. And that's a core distinction here. I don't tell clients that I am fixing them because I don't fix clients. I don't fix people. I don't think people really need to be fixed in that traditional way. Like, they're not a car. They're not a mechanical thing. They're a living, breathing organism. And the keys, the secret path to healing their body is already within them right now. I truly believe that. And I've seen that in my own life, and I've seen that in my clients' lives time and time again. And what I really do try to get across to my clients is that all I'm doing is providing a set of tools and skill sets and support to get your vagus nerve specifically to come back online, to be reinvigorated, to make your vagus nerve work again the way it's supposed to, and to give it all the tools and the resources that it needs so that so that the vagus nerve itself can then heal your body. Because that is what is happening. I don't fix the body. I do my best to fix the vagus nerve itself. And I do everything in my power at the expense of there's so many things in health that you could focus on. We could do tons of genetic testings, liver toxicity testing. There's lots of tests that can be run on a person. I've had clients I've heard so many horror stories about clients with Lyme disease who were told to spend $7,000 on a single test. Oh, we're really going to look deep in your blood and we're going to get you the exact strain of Bartonella. It's 1, 2, or 3. And as soon as we have that, then we'll have an actionable treatment plan for you. And they do the test. They take her $7,000. And then they go, honestly, it wasn't the result we were expecting. Sorry, we can't help you. Good luck, bye. So I've heard a lot of testing nightmare stories. And at the end of the day, it's these types of clients who end up working with me. And I'm like, wow, you sound like a difficult case. I won't lie. And I see your question, Diane. I'll get to in a second. But wildly enough, we start stimulating their vagus nerve, and then lo and behold, guess what? We see that they start to recover way fast, really, really fast. I'm not giving you specifics. Way fast isn't a specific date. I don't want to set any crazy expectations, but I mean, I have had clients with severe 10-year Lyme get to sleep for more than an hour a night within 3 days, 4 days, 5 days of incorporating vagus nerve stimulation. So can you blame me for being a little excited about that? Right? Like, again, I'm not fully immersed in the world of Lyme disease specifically, but I have had countless clients with Lyme, and I've seen what VNS can do in their care and how quickly, in a lot of cases, not 100% of the time, everybody's a little bit different, but I've seen some incredible transformations, and I can speak to that. And I've had interviews with these clients. They've sent me messages like in text and spoken to me on their calls. They're like, these are real, substantial, actual, objective changes that are happening in their health. And they're like, the only thing I changed was incorporating vagus nerve stimulation and the supportive, aspects of vagus nerve repair. So I've seen it myself, for sure. I've seen it myself 100 times, hundreds of times in clients' cases. Great. So Dan, want to get your question. Great. So vagus nerve stimulation is so needed in the Ehlers-Danlos community. I agree. Have you worked with those with EDS and all the comorbidities that come with that? Yes. So Ehlers-Danlos is basically like your neck is extremely, all the ligaments in your body basically don't hold you up. And so you have lots of like compression issues. That seems to compress the vagus nerve a lot. Anytime the vagus nerve gets pinched, then you develop, again, those comorbidities. That's what the comorbidities are, is EDS is compression. And yes, there's lots of issues. It's complicated. And as much as I can agree that a lot of these things are complicated, I don't believe that, look, if the fix came down to having encyclopedic knowledge about every single condition, then these conditions would be totally eradicated, right? Right? There is at least one person on the planet who has a substantial encyclopedic knowledge of EDS, right? Yes. Yet in those cases, just because you have encyclopedic knowledge of every single bit and piece of it doesn't mean that they can fix it. And what I've seen is that having, again, maybe I do have encyclopedic knowledge of the vagus nerve, but because the vagus nerve is such a high impact thing, is that's probably a feature, that special additional skill that I've developed here, and that I'm hopefully happy to transfer to everybody who will listen. If you stick around for these 5 days, you're going to learn enough about the vagus nerve to really be able to speak with some authority on what the hell the vagus nerve is. So I hope you will, commit to joining us at least for tomorrow, if you can. But yeah, so have I worked with those with EDS and all the comorbidities that come with that? Absolutely. From day one, we've had clients with EDS. It's a debilitating thing. Now, vagus nerve stimulation treats the comorbidities, but as far as EDS is typically a genetic condition related to the ligaments that are all over your body. And so the treatment the treatments for that specifically are going to involve collagen, stem cells, peptides. There's a lot of things that you have to do. Cervical traction. There's a lot of specialization in EDS that has to be addressed, but giving people the relief from the pressure that they've had on their vagus nerve for years is like, oh my God, they're so grateful for just that. Again, you did express an interest in, gastroparesis, as gastroparesis is a potential serious complication of EDS, as well as in lots of other cases of cervical instability and vagus nerve dysregulation. I had a client back in 2019 who didn't have EDS. She had no hypermobility, no scoliosis, no structural issues to speak of. Turns out that her main issue was a traumatic experience of a sexual nature when she was a child that so severely impacted her tailbone and her sacrum bone in her hips that it compressed the vagus nerve down there. And she was actually the one who stimulated her vagus nerve in that region. And we'll talk about that a little bit more tomorrow. What was that protocol that she used? So I'm making it juicy so you'll show up tomorrow. How do we treat gastroparesis? I'll tell you tomorrow. But again, she had that exact same type of experience that I shared at the very beginning with one of our initial test subjects, which is oh my God, I just remembered I had, when I was a child, this happened to me and I've never been able to share it. And that correlated with the remission of gastroparesis, which I found to be absolutely wild at the time. This is in 2019, early on in the game, 2017, 2018, 2019, I was still like, I'm seeing some effects from vagus nerve stimulation that were outside of the sphere of what I thought was possible. Because I was like, well, anyway, I've learned a lot, doing this for now 6 years in this field. I've learned a lot and I've seen a lot, and I have worked with EDS for sure. So that's a great question, Dan. Thank you so much. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to stop the stream on YouTube, and then we'll go back to Facebook real quick. So just give me a second. Thanks everybody so much on YouTube for joining us and watching us as well on the replay. And I will see you again tomorrow. I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye. All right. Cool.